Blessed Palm Sunday or Hosanna Sunday to all of you. كل سنة وانتم طيبين. This feast is very special for us because if you remember, all the last 5 years, we used to come early, set up icons and chairs, and put the icons in the chair for the procession, and try to figure out a way to do the procession. But this year we have to remember the mercies and the kindness of God, that God has given us a place that we can just come and enjoy the beauty of the church, of the Orthodox Church, and worship on Palm Sunday. Today, I want to talk to you about a couple of things, but I want you to think about this throughout this Holy Week. My beloved, this week is the holiest time of the year. This week is the holiest time of the year. Every minute counts. And as you can see from today until Easter night, Resurrection night, we're going to spend unimaginable number of hours in this building. We're going to come back tonight, come back tomorrow, and tomorrow night, and Tuesday morning, and Tuesday night, the rest of the week, Friday all day, and come back at night. This is done for our salvation. This is done that we can wake up. A lot of us are spiritually dead. And they need this time and this week to raise them up from their deadness, even if they come to church. Sometimes we are in the church, but the church and its teaching is not in our heart. The fear of God is not in our heart. And if we don't have the fear of God in us, we're not going to be saved. This is all going to be a waste of time. We must fear God, my beloved. And remember what St. Paul said, that the angels who fell, God banished them like Satan and his armies. What would happen to us if we neglected such a great salvation? If we took this lightly, what will happen to us? Think about this as we go through this week. I want to talk about Palm Sunday and its message briefly. The first thing I want to talk to you about, the beauty of today comes that Christ did all this by his choice. He chose to enter Jerusalem that way. He chose to keep going the way he chose for himself, by his own will. Also, those people that were telling him, tell the people to be silent and were attacking him, he had every power to, in a second, to annihilate them. But that's not what he does. So the first thing at the beginning of this Holy Week, are we like him? Are we like him in the way he acts, in the way he thinks? Do we have the mind of Christ in us? Or we have the mind of the world? When we have an opportunity, do we hit back? Or do we act like our humble king and what he did today? The second thing, and the one I want you to really pay attention to today, if you know nothing else from today, know this. In verse 42 of the gospel reading, the gospel of St. Luke, Christ said, if you had known what was for your peace, you would not have done this. Christ is saying this to all of us. If you had known what was good for you, you would not have done this. You would not be doing this. If you had known what was for your peace, you would not have done this. And at the end he said, because you did not know that, I leave your house desolate for you. I leave your house in ruins for you. My beloved, the people that we heard today saying Hosanna, save now, and laying the palm branches, where do we meet him again? When do we see him again? Which day? Friday. Same people. They had two wills. One will was for him to be the king, but he had to be a king according to their own mind, what they expect. But once their expectations were violated, they flipped to their evil will and crucify him. My beloved, I wonder, how can Palm Sunday and Good Friday exist? How can the same people cry out Hosanna, same people be the ones pushing for Pilate to crucify him, even though he didn't want to? They do exist because of the two wills. There is an evil will in us that we have to fight that comes from the world. And there is a will in us that we have to let God sanctify and work with and to be the winning will. This is the will that rules, not the will of the world like they did. I want to tell you that in our personal life, we do the same thing. I was listening recently to a sermon. One of the fathers was talking about the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. It's a beautiful book. And he was talking about how we only want to fit God to certain expectations in our life, spiritually and even in our personal life. If God does what we expect Him to do, everything is good. We love Him. He's our King. Hosanna. But the minute He starts to do things that we're not comfortable with, we don't like, Crucify Him comes. We do that. Even if we're not aware of it, we do it. And he said, this happens because sometimes we are concerned about what we intend for ourselves, like our own expectations for ourselves. We never ask, what does God want from me? What's His expectations for me? So in that book, Mere Christianity, the question that C.S. Lewis lays down is, the question is not what we intended for ourselves to be, but what He intended for us to be when He made us. The question is not what we intend for ourselves to be. It's what He intended for us to be when He made us. And he gave the beautiful analogy. And he said, usually when God helps us stop a certain sin, one sin, we think that God is done with us. Or God helps us with a situation, we think He did His work and we're done. We're okay with Him to stay away. But he said what happens when God works in us is just like you have a house that's old and has a leaking ceiling and has few rooms that need to be painted and fixed. And then God, we are at that house. When God comes and tries to fix the leak in the ceiling, makes sense, we're okay with that, thank you. And then we start to paint the walls that have issues on them, we're fine with that, great. But the minute He starts to tear down walls and do things that would not expect Him to do, we start to get angry, unfaithful, resentful, and get away from God. And God would be planning for us not to make the house into a good house, but to build a palace for us. He's building new walls and new wings and adding more space to the house that we're not aware of. Because we don't know. We don't let Him finish the work. So we don't get to see the final version of what He intended for us to be. My beloved, the people today laid down their palm branches and their clothes on the road. But what God wanted them to lie down was what? Was their will. And that's what God wants us from each and every one of us today. To come, bring our will, and put it under His feet. God, do in my life what you want. My life is yours. You own it. You own it. Everything I do, let it be according to your will. May God grant us to always yield to our humble King, and glory be to God forever and ever. Amen.